Because of the spooky season, I had set myself the goal to read as many horror books as I could this month. The original goal was to only read horror books, I believe, but I did not stick to that. I needed a little bit of a break in between some of them because, however, it definitely helped me discover what part of the horror genre I love and what part of the horror genre I wish to never lay my eyes on again. My favorite kind of horror books are usually the ones that incorporate some sort of fantastical element into the horror. I like it to feel creepy and eerie and maybe a bit gothic as well, but I want the horror element to be something magical, something fantastical, something resembling a monster. I realize that I'm not a huge fan of horror when it relies on humans being awful to each other. I ooh, I don't know if that makes sense. I think there are two very different kinds of horror: the fantastical, creepy, eerie, magical kind of horror, and the very real, dark, scary, wow, humans are so fucked up kind of horror. And the latter is just not my favorite. I end up struggling so much more to get through those books, and I just don't find myself enjoying it or wanting to pick it up and kind of dreading to see what else is this horrible human being going to do to these poor innocent people. If that makes sense. With that in mind, I'm going to go through some of my favorites and then maybe we'll touch upon some of the ones that I did not end up liking as much. To start off with, these are some that I had already read in the past years. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned them a couple of times on here, but I just feel like they deserve to be talked about again, and I did really enjoy these. And these are ones that once again have fantasy magical elements to them, like The Salt Grows Heavy. It's a very short book, a novella, only around 106 pages. And in this one, we follow dark, creepy, gory mermaids. Mermaids that have teeth and are hungry. So if you want something short and sweet with dark as hell mermaids and a bit of a dark, culty, creepy little kids vibe, then you might enjoy The Salt Grows Heavy. Next, we have The Sworn Soldier duology by T. Kingfisher. These are the first books I read by her, but I'm going to fix that. I'm going to be reading a lot more of T. Kingfisher hopefully next month. However, the Sworn Soldier duology are these really short, cute, cozy horror, if that's a thing, cozy fantasy horror. The first one is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, and I like Deacon Fisher's version better. And the second one follows the same characters with a new mystery to it, a new little horror elements to it. I feel like it incorporates very well folklore and horror folklore, if that makes sense. And the characters were just so funny and cozy. And there are little bits of creepy bits in here and there, but it's not going to give you nightmares. And I recommend listening to them as audiobooks. I thought they were very well narrated. The Spirit Bears Its Teeth and Hell Followed With Us. If you're looking for more of a young adult horror, however, I would definitely recommend checking out the trigger warnings before going into this. The author does a very good job at incorporating very important dark themes about homophobia and transphobia into his novels. Both main characters in the books are trans teenagers. The Spirit vs. Thief follows more of a historical fiction horror set in London, I believe, or in the UK around the 1800s. I could be totally wrong. And then the second book is a dystopian science fiction, futuristic, religious trauma, cults, body gore. I don't even know how to describe it, but they're both really well written. I ended up really caring for the characters in both novels, and I just thought they were overall very well done, and I ended up giving both, I think, 4 stars. However, if you're squeamish at all, I would recommend skipping these because the body gore in them and just like the way that certain things are described, very unsettling. And the first one is for sure more creepy, scary ghost horror, whilst the second one is more dark, religious trauma horror, if that makes sense. And on the topic of young adult horror, I would have to recommend The Gathering Dark, which is the first book that I started off with this month, I believe. And it's a collection of short stories. I ended up listening to this book quite quickly, and it was just the perfect way to start off the horror challenge, I think. It gave me just enough of creepy, spooky vibes without it being too scary for me, for my taste. And I kind of wish some of those short stories had been just a little bit longer. I think some of them had the potential to be a short novella or even a full fledged book. Characters were there, the foundation was there. I just wanted a tiny bit more. And the last one I want to mention that I ended up really liking this month was Ring Shout by the same author as A Master of Jinn. I listened to it as an audiobook and I would highly recommend doing that. The way the narration is done is incredible. One of the best audiobooks I've heard. And I was about 40% in. And although I was really enjoying it, I wasn't as emotionally attached to his characters as I had been with A Master of Jinn. And then the author went ahead and proved me so wrong because there's a certain death around the halfway mark that I did not expect to fully start sobbing to as I listened to the book. Just hit me so hard. The way that it was written was so beautifully done and heart wrenching. It's a historical fiction set in the early 1900s in the United States, and it touches a lot upon racism. And however, it incorporates very fantastical elements into it, which are creepy as hell. Once again, if you're squeamish in any way, I would not recommend this book. It has a lot of gore, a lot of blood, a lot of violence, a lot of trauma. The way it's written is just so. Mm. This author does such a good job at building characters and building an atmosphere. It's as if you were there with the characters. I feel like I mentioned this with A Master of Jinn, but he's just so talented at crafting environments and somehow managing to create these fully fledged, real feeling scenes in which you feel like you can smell it and you can taste it and you can see it all and you can hear it all and you're just there with the characters. It's a very immersive experience, and I think the audiobook definitely added to that. So I would highly recommend Ring Shout, but if you're in any way squeamish, avoid it. And as a final little bonus, I need to mention The Library at Mount Jar. I've talked about this book quite a few times before. I was about to say that it's the weirdest book I've ever read, and there's another book that I'm about to talk about that definitely takes the lead on that. But The Library Mount Char is one of the weirdest books I've ever read. However, in a very weird way, I enjoyed it. I'm not sure if I would recommend it specifically unless you like that feeling of being stuck in a never ending nightmare. Then you would like this book. I would recommend going into it completely blind, but make sure you read the trigger warnings beforehand because it's quite a lengthy list. If you're looking for something very weird, and definitely horrific from the library muncher. Now let's go ahead and talk about the books that made me realize that there are certain parts of horror that I really, really don't enjoy and will not be picking up again. And that has to be the book Earthlings. I had read Convenience Store Woman by the same author, and I did really enjoy it. These are translated from Japanese into English, and I had really enjoyed Convenience Store Woman. It's a very weird, nothing happens kind of book, but a very interesting conversation. And I thought the author did a very good job with it. Quite short. I would recommend checking that one out. However, I would say stay far, far away from Earthlings. What the actual, what was that? If you had read Earthlings, are you okay? Am I okay? Are we okay? I don't think we're okay. I think for anyone who reads Earthlings, it should come with a free therapy session. Because this book, I I don't even know how to describe this book. Once again, read the trigger warnings because it has topics like cannibalism, murder, violence, sexual assault, child abuse, incest, everything and anything that you can think that is weird and messed up in any way and you would not want to, read about all at once is in there. Is it enthralling? Yes. Did I read it all in 2 days? Yes. Could I tell you why? No. I regret reading this book. And yet I couldn't put it down. Why? I don't know. I think humans just have this weird tendency to want to read things that disturb us for some reason or consume things that disturb us. I think is the same reason why so many people love watching horror movies and going to haunted houses and like doing all those kind of things. I'm not one of those people. Usually, I hate horror movies. I would never go to like a haunted house kind of experience or like a locked room type of thing. It would just no, no, thank you. That's not the kind of thrill that I enjoy. I went into this book not thinking it was going to be bad. The blurb does not give you any warnings whatsoever, and all the reviews that I had seen seemed like people enjoyed it, or at least were recommending it as, yes, a very weird and disturbing book, but I wasn't expecting that. So, yeah, that was my experience with Earthlings, and right after that, I decided I don't enjoy reading books that include these kind of themes, and it felt almost as if the author just kept throwing one thing after the other purely for shock value to a certain degree. I was just like, do we really need to add this other weird, crazy, messed up thing in here? Like, we've already had enough. Can the characters just maybe be a little bit more normal? Yeah. I can understand the conversation topics around this book. I can understand some of the reviews or what people are saying, but I don't think it's a book I would ever recommend to anyone. And then I proceeded to start listening to Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction anthology. I was so excited for this book. I was expecting to go in and read a lot about dark, creepy folklore, Indigenous folklore. The first short story delivered, however, the rest, this is the one that I might be softly DNFing. I think I'm about halfway through, or 40% through or so, and I'm gonna have to put it down. I'm not quite sure if I'll never pick it up again or if I might just listen to a chapter here and there because I think they're very well written and the book has great reviews. However, this is one of those books where the horror is not as fantastical as I would like it to be, and it's just a lot more real and dark and touching upon really heavy subjects and just exposing the reality of how horrible and just awful human beings can be. And although I think it is important to talk about these themes, I am not sure I'm in the right place right now to be reading more of it. So I might take a little break from these kind of books. I'll definitely never be reading anything like Earthlings ever again. For a couple of you who told me that you were excited for me to read it, thank you. Not really, but what? Sorry, I'm just still in shock about that. But anyways, the other two books that I'm currently in the middle of are Ninth House. I'm hoping I get to finish this before the month is over. I am really enjoying it. This is more of a dark academia, gothic fantasy, a little bit of horror in there so far. We'll see if it gets any creepier. I know it's also a duology, and I love the other books that Leigh Bardugo has written, so I have high hopes for this one. And thankfully, I don't think this is one of those books that's going to scar me, so I'm excited to continue reading this one. And then Chlorine is another Dark Mermaid story. And so I'll give you a better review once I have finished it in my October wrap up, if I manage to finish it. Hopefully, we'll see. So yeah, that's just my little update on how the month has been so far and how my challenge of reading more horror books has gone. I'm really glad I have learned what kind of horror I enjoy, what kind of horror I will stay far, far away from, and I'm really excited to start picking up more books that have those fantastical, magical, creepy, eerie, cozy horror vibes. So if you have any recommendations for books like that, I would be so appreciative of them. Thank you. And if you enjoy books like Earthlings, then I don't want to hear about it. Yeah. I was starting to wonder why I was struggling to see. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll see you in my next video.